The Airbus Albo doesn't meet Trump's story. Who thought there was another chapter? But there is. A little attention to detail will also tell us that maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to leave the G7 in the fashion in which he said he did. Now, as you know, President Trump was there with the other world leaders, but today it was the kids' table chance to stand out there with the rest of the world leaders, minus the most important one. And there he is, the Prime Minister, smiling politely about, oh, where are you from? Oh, hello, I'm from Australia. Oh, g'day, Vlad, how are you? You know, just here I am. I know everyone. I'm so comfortable in the world stage. Rightio. But, of course, the main game had already moved on. President of the United States was supposed to be there again today. Basically, the first half, it's only 2 days. One day was the 7 most important countries in the world, according to that grouping. Of course, China, Russia, not part of that. Then, of course, the B team, the kids' table, who weren't even allowed to dine with those main leaders last night. Well, they had their moment today. Now, I know you know all of this, right? But I'm telling you, tonight there's some new detail worth talking about here. There's some extra detail that under the cover of football and the fog of war that we probably should take a moment, because I know that in the end, the left are the ones who at this point in time are in charge of almost everything, which means anything other than everything is okay will be wiped from the record. But you, by sitting here this hour, this night, are able to learn something that they will all pretend does not exist by this time tomorrow. Today, Labor Party people had to go around and tell us everything's fine. There was nothing personal or nothing at all about the idea that the President of the United States didn't just blow off the meeting with the Australian Prime Minister, but of course, even when on the same day he had blown off a meeting, which was supposed to happen today with the Mexican President, he called the Mexican President during the multiple-hour flight from Canada to Washington, D.C. Australia, not on the list. So here was the spin today.
This was always a chance of happening, given what's happening around the world and particularly in the Middle East.
It's completely understandable that the US President would be returning to Washington, D.C. to deal with that. We shouldn't be reading more into it than that.
Oh, let's enjoy Richard Marles specifically, though. Now, that was him once he was sort of out and about, but this morning he was here having a conversation on Sky News this morning. Questions are clear. Answer, nothing to see here.
Has there been any indication from Israel that there may be a window opening soon for flights out of Israel?
Look, I'm not in a position to give a definitive answer in relation to any of that.
Is this an indication that the US is prepping for a strike against Iran?
Well, obviously, I'm not about to speculate on what America's going to do, and I'm certainly not a spokesperson for the US government.
Has the Prime Minister just avoided having to try to justify America giving us nuclear submarines out of its own Navy fleet and thereby weakening itself to strengthen Australia when Australia, in Trump's view, is not spending enough to look after our own defence?
Well, there's a lot in that question.
Do you expect that he'll recommend Australia to increase defence spending as well during that meeting?
Look, I think there's a lot which is talked about in relation to defence.
Has China indicated yet that they will be sending warships to our region to monitor the exercise Talisman Sabre?
Well, it's not going to surprise you when I say that China don't forecast any of that to us in advance.
Do you expect there's a chance that China will conduct its own exercises next month?
Well, again, I'm not about to speculate on any of that.
Is it over? Is it over yet? Is he finished? Wow. Questions were clear. He wouldn't go anywhere near it, but such is life. Oh, that only happened on Sky. Don't worry about it. Nobody was able to remember what happened. Please. But the 2 bits of detail that I really want you to see tonight is what about the Prime Minister? Now, again, I stand by. For those that are half paying attention, for those that are, looking for some reason to put me on a pile of people who don't understand what's going on. I hope Australia has a meeting. Whenever it happens, I hope it's positive. I certainly hope that the current Prime Minister, who, yes, I didn't vote for, but still we deal with for the next 3 years, is able to form some sort of a personal relationship that means we're able to start doing deals, whatever those are, big or small. I want that to take place. But don't you just love the face saving? The face saving that was there for the Prime Minister today. Remember, I'm off to the G7 to meet the President of the United States. Reality, I didn't have dinner with him because he was with more important world leaders. I was at the kids' table, and today I got to meet other second and third class world leaders, and then have a listen to what he throws in at the end to make it seem like, and I know everybody else.
I had discussions with President Macron of France, Prime Minister Modi of India, Prime Minister Ramaphosa of South Africa, Prime Minister Sheinbaum of Mexico, Prime Minister Meloni of Italy, as well as saying g'day to a whole bunch of other people during the day.
Seriously? I met this one and this one and this one, and then I said g'day to people. Well, by that logic, I must have 1,000 best friends, because when I walk in and out of Bunnings, I say g'day to people. They may or may not wave back. When I go to the shops, g'day mate, how are you? When I'm hanging out with Asher and Zadie, and they love this when I just start randomly talking to other members of the public. G'day. Oh, they're all my friends now, according to this global level of leader interaction. Because we've got to make it look like, oh, it doesn't matter, we weren't dumped. And again, I repeat, I understand he had to get out of Dodge. Why? Because there was very serious things he had to deal with. We all know what's been happening in between Israel and Iran. But again, another little bit of detail I want you to learn about. Again, all of this will be brushed from the record. It will not exist anywhere. It will be a fever dream in our minds. Now, remember when we were told that, of course, Trump, absolutely number one reason he had to get back to the White House was not because he was over it, he'd had enough of Macron, he was not going to meet the B team. No, he had to get back. Why? Because of the beginning, the cusp of World War III. And yes, that might be so, that was the first thing he did was run into the Situation Room, but it wasn't the only thing he did yesterday. Exactly in and around the time that he would have been meeting with the Australian Prime Minister, we learnt that Donald Trump was doing something he considered to be more important than meeting the Australian Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese. And that was inspecting not one, but 2 new flagpoles that he himself, as a personal citizen, is going to donate to the White House, so the American flag will be visible from the public streets. And while the President had no time to meet the Australian Prime Minister, who's saying g'day to other world leaders, this came out. This came out at 10:20 Australian time today, so that was about 6-ish American time. He would have already met the Prime Minister, but there was no time for that instead. These are the most magnificent poles made. They are tall, tapered, rust-proof, rope inside the pole and the highest quality. Now, I'm glad that he's been able to give that gift. But again, if we were told the reason I've absolutely got to go is because I'm 100% focused on potentially World War III, but in the middle of that, I've got a bit of time for what is going to be a lovely gift to the White House, that being a couple of it may be, just maybe, and given that we're now, a couple of days in between the urgent run out of the meeting and nothing taking place to this point in time, that maybe, just maybe, he was done with it. Maybe, just maybe, he saw that on the call sheet was, among others, some guy from Australia. Do I have to see the guy from Australia? Oh, yeah, he's the one who said he was what? Oh, scared of me. Okay, no. But don't worry. There's a chance that the media may well eventually get what they want, which is this meeting of which we can ask, difficult questions of the President of the United States to try to play into the American news cycle, of which Anthony Albanese will be able to make some passive-aggressive comments because I'm standing up for Australia's rights. He'll show far more balls in his meeting with the President of the United States than he would, of course, in the bootlicking exercise with the President of China, because he's managing the relationship. Well, according to people that are in and around where the Prime Minister is right now in Canada, there's a chance he might put himself through this whole nonsense again in about a week's time. Again, I'm mucking around here. I'm laughing at these people, but obviously I want a meeting. I want it to be good. But, everyone's spinning here. I have to get away because I'm in the middle of World War III. But look at these flagpoles. I'm not. I was no. I was busy. I had people to say g'day to on the other end of things. A day after, Albanese said Defence Minister Richard Marles would be attending the NATO summit on Australia's behalf. The Prime Minister has announced he may go instead. Why? The volatile state of the world. So yesterday, when there had already been fire exchanged between Israel, Iran, Israel, not to mention all of the other instabilities of the world, no, Marles will be going in my place. Why? Because I want to avoid that bloke on Sky News calling me Airbus Albo. But instead, I don't know, sub him out because it's a chance for me to get that FaceTime and the passive-aggressive and all the rest of it and bring my media mates with me to talk to Donald Trump. Sources said if a meeting with the president could be locked in, he would go. Geez, exclusives. Sources say if they could organise a meeting, he'd go to the meeting. OK, thanks. There's a lot of conversation happening, says one. And again, I'm not having a crack at Philip Curry, I'm having a crack at the sources. The White House confirmed 2 weeks ago that Trump will be attending the NATO summit, June 24-25, although the State Department has warned on Wednesday nothing is certain. Why? Because of the obvious. I love the media being more upset that they didn't get the chance to play their voodoo and all the rest of it on the president that they don't like and polish up the Prime Minister that they do like. I love that the Prime Minister that we have, among other things, says, oh, and I said g'day to a lot of people. I'm still a world leader. And the President has to go because World War III's on. But in between all of that, did you see the flagpoles they bought for the joint? I love this place. I really do. Now, there is a chart I have shown you many, many times because it is the future of the Australian relationship between government, debt, and the future of our country. Now, I want to keep this up because you've seen it a few times, but for those who do not remember, if you remember it though, say it along with me. Every single blue line inside the red rectangle are budget deficits between this year, next year, the year after, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, all the way to 2063. Every one of those deficits is added on top of the previous one, the previous one, the previous one, the previous one. And even before this red line starts, we are $1 trillion in debt. Just putting a couple of those columns together would get us to $1.5 trillion, eventually 2, and goodness forbid even further than that. So this matters, right? This basically is that the federal budget is structurally spending more money than is coming in, even when the population will increase to 40 million people by the 2060s. Well, Jim Chalmers, fresh from the federal election campaign, he was at the National Press Club today, where he confirmed what I have been saying for years, what Treasury confirmed since 2023. Oh, but now it's news that he's going to admit it as far away from a federal election as possible. He has admitted that his budget is not yet sustainable and it depends on productivity and productivity growth. Put simply, it's not sustainable because as the population grows, so will the expenses of the federal government, but the income to the federal government will not match the explosion in spending because they are promised too much spending in too many areas for too many people. Here's the Treasurer finally admitting what we've known for years but have had confirmed by his own Treasury. That document I show you, that graph is from 2023. So before Trump, before a whole bunch of things, before what was going on in the middle of 2023. The next 40 years was screwed from 2023, nothing to see here, everything's awesome in 24, thanks for the re-election in 25, and now this.
To deliver higher living standards for our people, we recognise 3 blunt truths. Our budget is stronger, but it's not yet sustainable enough. Our economy is growing, but it's not productive enough. It is resilient, but it's not resilient enough in the face of all of this global economic volatility.
Now, they're not the first, they won't be the last. But these people were able to get themselves not just re-elected, but with a thumper, so much so that the opposition that was already behind the 8 ball is now, gasping for political life. So they are in a perfect political position to suggest they're going to be around for a very, very long time. But as they did with the vote for us and cost of living will get better, the majority of people fell for the lie in 22. We told you it was a lie. They said it wasn't a lie. The reality turned out that it was a lie. We've turned the corner. Everything's awesome. Everything's okay. We're excellent economic managers. We told you it was a lie, but people fell for the lie, and now we get proof of the lie being a lie. So we get to this scenario about exactly what's going to take place. And what is going to take place is a thing called tax reform. And I want you to hear how many times he said it in the speech to make sure that even the idiot right up the back was able to learn, hey guys, tax reform, tax reform.
Tax reform, tax reform, tax reform, tax reform, tax reform, tax reform, tax reform.
Now, you may well think tax reform just means cutting taxes everywhere. Well, we already know that that has been part of the game over the past couple of years. But of course, if you rob the government of revenue, but you continue to increase its spending, then guess what? The budget becomes unsustainable. So there's one option, which is to cut back the amount that you are spending. But of course, that would create losers, and cuts is sort of the evil ooga booga stuff that has very successfully worked against the Liberal Party for a couple of elections now. So guess what tax reform means? Increasing revenue to the federal government. And you may well read, and every time you hear that there's not enough tax reform, you pretty much now need to read that there's not enough plans for increasing revenue. Now, obviously, politically, would they ever put up the tax rates on the individual worker? Remember, the single biggest source of revenue to the federal government? No. Why? Because those people vote. But of course, they're going to go after a certain section of those people who may well not traditionally vote for them, or they might go after businesses of which they don't care if they hit the wall or not, because remember how many times we talk about the plan is the triangle, to be dependent via handout, to be dependent because you work for them, or to be dependent if government is your biggest customer. This gets them to 60, 70% of the population. Look at what Andrews and Allen have done in Victoria, what Palaszczuk until recently had done in Queensland. See how people don't rock the boat? Well, Ken Henry is a man who was hired by the Rudd government to do, among other things, a full root and branch review of the tax system. He, of course, has come in and out of, plenty of corporate jobs, but the media often turn to him as the guy who did the tax reform review, the tax review. So interestingly, in an interview with the Australian Financial Review, Ken Henry is kind of starting to bell the cat about what tax reform would actually mean. Can I read this to you? At some point, the rate of the GST is going to have to be increased. Okay, so the GST is going to go up. And its base is going to have to be broadened, meaning more things. More things. I'm just writing all this down in GST. It's like fresh food. Revenue is not a problem. If you want to boost the federal budget overnight by $50 billion a year, all you would have to do is apply a carbon tax at the present price of carbon credits to the carbon embedded in Australia's fossil fuel exports, coal and gas. That would give you $50 billion a year. Yes, I know that by just putting a price tag on something, theoretically, you're able to clip the ticket and that $50 billion. But maybe if the cost and the difference between the profit you make on the export is anything under that $50 billion, the people who are exporting it won't do it because they're not going to do it to lose money, mate. The former Treasury head said that the government should also address a really big anomaly of superannuation. Okay, so that one as well, super taxes, okay. So despite the fact that you, since the 1990s, have been putting your money away, forced to do so by the government, on the provision that if, 5%, 7%, 11%, 16% if you're in the public service, is being put away, that nothing will ever eat away at it. Oh, but now it's a big giant pot of money. Thanks very much. We might change the taxes on that. Fair dinkum. So that's what tax reform is going to mean, okay? Now, we might clip a little bit here. But the reason we're clipping a little bit here is because we can sell that to all of the little mushrooms who vote. And because they work for companies, they don't run companies. Because they work for businesses, they don't own businesses, who cares? Well, the reality is, after multiple years of this government, its policies and its administration, there are thousands of businesses that don't exist anymore. A record number went to the wall in the past 3 years, and guess what? The latest numbers about where we are this year compared to last year is we're even higher than that. Nearly 7,000 business collapses as insolvencies surge. Particular areas that are copying it, the construction industry, food and accommodation. But because, of course, all of that's not run by the federal government or the state government or the local government, who cares, right? The number of businesses shutting their doors has reached a historic high, as almost 7,000 businesses across New South Wales have become insolvent in the past 11 months. Data shows insolvency in New South Wales increased by 26% from the same time period last year, which was 5 and a bit. It's now almost 7,000 businesses. Because you see, they're outside of the triangle, right? Anything outside of the triangle, the only thing that it is for is to give money to the triangle. That's it. The latest ASIC insolvency data reveals 1,000 businesses in the accommodation and food services sector, mostly cafes and restaurants, have shut their doors. Close to 2,000 construction companies between July 1 last year, May 25 this year. Let's compare this state to state. New South Wales has the most insolvencies compared to others. Victoria has 5,000 of them. Queensland has 3,000 of them. Western Australia has 1,200 of them. And South Australia has 815. Oh, but now's the time for tax reform. Yeah, nothing will at all happen to the businesses of Australia if you increase the GST from 10 to 12 to 15%. Yes, most of that money will go to the states, which means less complaining from them, but still the sticker price is going to go up. Oh, that's serious. That's serious tax reform. Just charging people more is not tax reform. It is just trying to find the fuel to fill the tank for how hot the government is running when it comes to its own expenditure, which by its own admission will be in deficit next year, the year after that, as far as we can see for the next 40 years. But because they'll all turn around and say, Donald Trump's fault, Orange Man bad, rather than anyone turning around and saying, yeah, okay, you might say Orange Man bad, but your Treasury made this forecast in 2023. In fact, it came out on the same day that he was having his mugshot taken in Atlanta, Georgia. So he was as far away from the presidency as anyone could possibly imagine, literally giving his fingerprints and taking a photo. But you watch, what they knew would be bad by 25, 26, 27, they will now turn around and blame them on Orange Man bad. Why? Because they can, because they do, and because most of the media is along for the ride, they'll never call it out. Hence why they will just keep trying to bunker buster at us. But we need you to be here live, 9 o'clock Australian Eastern, homepage skynews.com.au. When you see these videos pop up on YouTube, share them around to your mates. Again, none of this is contestable. This is all facts, right? Facts from ASIC, facts from the Treasury, and facts from what the Treasurer said today. But because big footy game on, have a look over there, something's happening on the other side of the world, Prime Minister saying g'day to world leaders rather than meeting the most important one in the world, because he's putting flagpoles up out the front of the White House, nothing to see here. So quickly, about matters to do with conflict right now. So right now, I think it's about 2 o'clock in the afternoon in Israel. It's about 2:30 in the afternoon right now in Iran, and it is about 7:30, I think, in the morning at the White House. Now, the latest news from the Iranian leader is the Iranian leader say, we are not going to surrender, meaning there's about to potentially be this giant face-off. Why? Because we know that there is massive pressure to say, hey, the current people are running Iran, get out of the way. And if you don't get out of the way, we know exactly where you are. And among others, Israel, United States will kill you. If that doesn't happen, then the hope is going to be to make sure that Iran's capacity to build a nuclear bomb to principally go after Israel, but potentially make its way all the way over to the east coast of the United States, is what they need to blow up, and need to blow up very quickly. Because obviously, the more time that rolls on, the more chance there is for them to move the things that need to be moved. Now, You know they've hit a whole bunch of stuff they can see above the ground, but there's a whole bunch of stuff that is below the ground. And that is this area here. Essentially, a couple of 100 metres under the ground is all of the serious stuff that is part of their weapons program when it comes to nuclear bombs. As you know by now, there is only one bomb and one bomb in the world that is going to be able to crack through the rock, and then you keep throwing a few others down the hole that produces until eventually it drills down and blows away all the stuff that is below the ground. You know this thing to be the bunker buster. 20 feet, 5 inches in the old language. You can see what that's like compared to the size of a normal human being. The Washington Post explains how it works. Well, put simply, it can, once it blasts through the ground, go 200 feet underground. A fuse then detonates a warhead and an explosion happens after it's drilled itself 200 feet into the ground. Once you've got a hole, once you've got a channel, then additional bombs kept being thrown in, down that tube, and that tube starts to widen out until eventually you can cut the whole top of the mountain off or hundreds of metres down into the ground. The only people who have it are the Americans, which is why we are talking about what's Donald Trump going to do, why does it matter what the Iranians respond with. Israel says slowly but surely they might be able to carve away at it, but they can't. They don't have the technology to do this. The only country that does is the United States. Now, a whole bunch of reasons why they may want to do it, to take a bad player off the table, or don't want to do it because they maybe don't want to expose the technology. I don't know. Clearly, I'm not involved in the situation room, and everyone is essentially kind of trying to fill the information gap until we actually know what is going to be taking place. But a little further explanation about how these things work from the Associated Press.
Bunker buster is not a specific bomb. It's a type of bomb. What we're talking about is a specific American weapon, which is 30,000-pound precision-guided bomb, and it can only be carried by the B-2 stealth bomber right now, because that's the only plane that's configured to carry such a weapon.
Old school Republicans say use it.
I've said from the very beginning it is in our national security interest to make sure Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon. They're an existential threat to our friends in Israel. They really do mean death to Israel, but they also mean death to America. It is my belief that President Trump understands the threat the Ayatollah presents to us, not just Israel, and that he will, at the end of the day, help Israel finish the job. And that will require, I think, weapons that Israel doesn't possess and maybe joint military operations.
New school Republicans, more so sort of standalone MAGA people, well, they hate the idea. They don't want it because they think it might be the beginning of something that will become something like Iraq or Afghanistan. Tucker Carlson, speaking to Ted Cruz, who's kind of got a foot in both camps, tried to, frankly, embarrass him today by how little he knew about the country of which he wants to bomb.
How many people live in Iran, by the way?
I don't know the population.
At all?
No, I don't know the population.
You don't know the population of the country you seek to topple?
How many people live in Iran?
92 million.
Okay. Yeah,
How could you not know that?
I don't sit around memorizing population tables.
But then there is this lovely little bit of information as the media tries to fill the very many tense hours between the president leaving the G7 to get back to Washington to make this decision about does he or does he not use the only weapon in the world that will be able to essentially finish off Iran's capacity to ever have a nuclear weapon, or at least have one for any time in the foreseeable future. And there are people that are trying to read anything into everything, and sometimes they can get to sort of the silly levels of things. The Pentagon, 30,000 people work in that building, of course, as the heartbeat of everything to do with the national defence of the United States. And apparently, some smarty pants have worked out that pizza may well tell us about whether the world is about to go to war. Hear me out. According to the Times of London, they have said that there is a way potentially of being able to predict a global crisis about how much pizza is being ordered by people inside the Pentagon. Now, take all this with a giant grain of salt in which I'm presenting it to you. But apparently there is a Twitter account, and apparently the people are using as much information as they possibly can to work out whether the people inside the Pentagon are staying late, preparing for war. Let's turn to Inside Edition for their explanation.
Can pizza deliveries to the Pentagon serve as a predictor of a looming international crisis? That's what happened when Israel launched its preemptive strike on Iran last week. According to an account on X called the Pentagon Pizza Report, nearly all pizza establishments nearby the Pentagon have experienced a huge surge in activity.
Please tell me more.
When U.S. military personnel face a national emergency, they work late into the night and can't leave their desks. So, ordering pizza from local pizza joints is the cheapest and easiest choice for food, other than the Pentagon canteen. At 8:57 p.m. Thursday, the Pentagon Pizza Report reported that the closest and second closest Domino's to the Pentagon had surged in traffic. Surges in pizza deliveries were also reported at other local pizza places like District Pizza Palace and We the Pizza.
We'll all find out together, won't we? In the meantime, who else is hungry?